Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today, we're journeying back in time to an era of silent prayers and sudden, terrifying storms. We're going to explore a story often overlooked in the grand sagas of kings and warriors, the story of Christian stuns and the dawn of the Viking Age. Before the Viking longships ever touched the shores of England or France, the lives of these women were marked by a profound simplicity and unwavering devotion. Imagine, if you will, life within a cloister, far from the noise of kingdoms and the clamor of battles. These women dedicated their entire existence to study, charity, and worship. Their days were a comforting, predictable rhythm. They rose before dawn, their first thoughts a prayer. They marked their hours not by the sun, but by the tolling of the chapel bell, a constant reminder of their sacred purpose. To them, the world outside their convent walls was a distant rumor storm they could watch from a high window, but whose winds and rain they would never feel. That illusion of safety, however, was about to shatter in the most brutal way imaginable. By the 8th century, Christianity was a powerful, expanding force across Europe. Monasteries and convents weren't just religious centers. They were the beating hearts of culture, art, and knowledge. Within their sturdy stone walls lay the treasures of a civilization. Think of the illuminated manuscripts, each letter a work of art painstakingly copied by careful, dedicated hands. Picture gleaming silver chalices, golden reliquaries, and sacred relics believed to hold the very power of miracles. The Church's wealth grew exponentially as kings and nobles, hoping to secure their salvation, donated vast tracts of land and chests of gold. But this accumulation of wealth, no matter how holy its purpose, has always acted as a magnet for the hungry and the ambitious. And far to the north, in the icy fjords of Scandinavia, a very different world thrived. Here lived the Norsemen, a people of farmers, traders, and, above all, fierce and pragmatic warriors. Theirs was a creed of honor, strength, and conquest. Their gods, Odin and Thor, demanded courage in battle, not humility in prayer. They valued blood spilled for glory, not wine blessed in a ceremony. So, when tales began to trickle north, whispers of undefended monasteries scattered along the coastlines, filled with untold riches and guarded only by priests and nuns, the temptation was irresistible. To the Vikings, these holy places weren't sacred, they were simply opportunities. They were poorly defended storehouses of treasure. And the people within them, no longer seen as servants of a distant god, became symbols of a rival power and obstacles to be overcome. The year is 793 AD, the place, the holy island of Lindisfarne, off the coast of Northumbria. When the first Viking sails appeared on the horizon, the monks and nuns who saw them likely felt no alarm. Perhaps they were traders, they might have thought, or fishermen from a nearby village. The wind was calm, the sea deceptively peaceful. But then the serene sound of lapping waves was replaced by a new, menacing rhythm, the rhythmic crash of dozens of oars hitting the water in perfect, powerful unison. The sleek longships glided ashore, their dragon-headed prows seeming to snarl at the sacred ground, and from their decks poured a tide of men armed with axes, shields, and a terrifying, unholy rage. The chronicles of the time, written by horrified churchmen, are stark. They tell us that the attackers showed no mercy. The monastery was looted, its priceless manuscripts torn, its relics stolen or smashed. The holy men and women who had dedicated their lives to this sanctuary were either slain where they stood or dragged away in chains, their fate a terrifying mystery. But what these ancient writers couldn't fully describe, what they could only hint at, was the sheer paralyzing terror that spread in the aftermath. For the first time, the faithful of Christendom were confronted with a horrifying new reality. Holiness was not a shield. Piety offered no protection against the raw, chaotic violence of the world. To the nuns of Europe, this message was chillingly clear. Even the most sacred of places, the very houses of God, could be violated. Word of the Lindisfarne raid spread like wildfire, carried by terrified refugees and grim-faced messengers. The sea, once a pathway for pilgrimage and trade, transformed overnight into a symbol of dread. Every strange sail on the horizon brought a fresh wave of panic. The familiar, comforting sound of church bells no longer signified a call to peaceful prayer. It became an alarm, a desperate warning to fortify the walls, to hide the sacred treasures, and to pray for a deliverance that now seemed so very far away. In convents all along the coastlines of Britain, Ireland, and Francia, the sisters began to live not just in prayer, but in constant gnawing fear. Their lives, once a predictable cycle of worship, were now punctuated by frantic preparations and anxious vigils. They still prayed for deliverance, of course, but their prayers took on a new urgency. They prayed for early warning, for the strength to endure, and for mercy from men who did not recognize the God they served, and who saw their faith not as a virtue, but as a weakness to be exploited. And this was only the beginning. What started as a single, shocking raid on a remote island would soon become a relentless wave of violence that swept across Europe. The Viking incursions would change everything the continent's faith, its art, its politics, and its architecture. Castles would rise where monasteries once stood undefended. The world of the nuns, once a sheltered garden protected by walls of stone and silence, was now brutally exposed to the sea's cruel, unpredictable horizon. As the fires of Lindisfarne smouldered into cold ash, one terrible truth burned brighter than ever. The age of peace had ended. The gods of the north had found their way to the shores of Christendom, and the world would never be the same. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey into the past. It's a powerful reminder that history is filled with these dramatic clashes of culture, faith, and survival. If you found this story as fascinating as I do, please hit that like button and consider subscribing for more deep dives into the hidden corners of history. We'll see you in the next one.